All right. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out to start this week. My name is Amanda Toomey. I'm one of the organizers for the event. On my screen, you will see the sessions that are happening right now. So currently, you are logged in to Trained to Learn How a Liberal Arts Degree Supports the Skills of Entrepreneurship. If for some reason this is not where you want to be, you can click right on Change Track under your screen and navigate throughout the site to the other sessions playing. But if you were to ask me, I think you're right where you belong. So I think you should stay right here. Anyhow, so while you are navigating around, figuring out where you need to go, as a reminder, we do love questions. So please use the Q&A tab on the right of your screen to submit any questions you might have during the session so we can answer those at the end. Also, I'm sure you've heard of this already, but just in case you haven't, we have an awesome social media competition floating around right now. Basically, you'll want to pay attention to what our speakers are saying today, and then you're going to post an awesome quote on social media from one of them using the hashtag SBW2021. You'll then be entered to win one of $500 gift cards to a Black-owned Boston business. So definitely make sure you do that and enjoy the session today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to our moderator, Nyla Brewster.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. So hi, everyone. Welcome to Startup Week Boston 2021, Trained to Learn How a Liberal Arts Degree Supports the Skills of an Entrepreneur. So my name is Nyla Brewster, and I'll be your moderator for this afternoon. So I'm a current senior at Harvard College studying social studies and computer science. Outside of school, I've spent the past few years working with a bunch of young social entrepreneurs through the Social Innovation and Change Initiative, and I also work directly with a growing fintech startup in Boston called Vices Invest. Tonight, I'm joined by two incredible speakers who graduated with bachelor's degrees in liberal arts and then use these transferable skills to leverage their careers today. So I'll start off by having Jonas introduce himself, and he'll do a little intro.
Yeah, thanks, Nyla. Hey, everybody. My name is Jonas Stinkena. I'm currently a product manager at an early stage tech company in Boston called Parler. And before Parler, I worked at an ed tech company in Boston called Firecracker as a product manager as well. Prior to that, I was at Tufts University, where I studied international relations and economics. I could tell you a lot about how that kind of involves in my daily work. But other than that, I'm happy to be here and excited to kind of share a little bit of what I've learned over the years.
Awesome. And our next panelist is Mei Lee.
Hi, folks. Thanks for joining today. I hope you all are having a great day, and this is a nice kickoff to the start of the weekend. So my name is Mei Lee. I am a Bostonian, grew up in the heart of Boston, Chinatown. I went to Barnard College in New York City to study psychology. So it's been over a decade since I've been in the workforce. It's hard to believe. So after college, I worked for an energy tech startup called Enernog, now called NLX. And from there, I transitioned to a workforce development nonprofit called Year Up. And from there, I joined General Assembly, which I've been with this company for 3.5 years now. We are a global education company. Looking back, my liberal arts degrees definitely prepared me for all the many changes, merger and acquisitions that I've witnessed and experienced at these various companies.
Okay, great. Thank you for those wonderful introductions. So just to frame this panel for today, I'm going to start us off with just a couple preset questions, but we encourage everyone watching to send in their own questions through that Q&A function you'll see on the right of your screen. So you're highly encouraged to do this, engage with us, send any comments if you have them. But with that, I'll get us started with our first question. So can you both share with us your transition into startup life and one way how your liberal arts education was beneficial? And I will start off with Jonas with this one.
Sure. So my transition into startup life actually came from an opportunity that I got while I was a sophomore at Tufts University, and I actually met my my boss through an extracurricular group that I was a part of. I was able to kind of network and find an opportunity to meet with somebody who was the chief product officer at a growing ed tech company in the Boston area. And was able to kind of just share my interest in breaking into tech, and as a result got an opportunity to work as a content manager at this company. So essentially writing blogs and handling customer support inquiries. So, really, I'd say out of kind of the liberal arts education background, it being beneficial towards that early transition into startup life. It was certainly, kind of first and foremost, the access to this powerful network, this, kind of group of professionals who, just by the nature of, going to the same school as you, are, more willing to give you an opportunity. And then second, just given that I was studying international relations, my coursework included a lot of analytical writing. In the kind of analytical writing tests that they had me do during the interview process, was able to kind of show that I was able to write decently. So I would say just kind of having that background of writing papers for every single class. Whether or not the content is related to what I was writing for the blogs is irrelevant. It was just kind of putting that work in of getting the reps in of writing and kind of going through that process, and also being able to think critically and responding to those customer support inquiries or things that kind of the technical writing piece that I feel like I also was able to pick up from some of that liberal arts education.
Yeah, and for me, I have a slightly different experience. What I really valued about liberal arts education is while you do have a major in a specific field, you are open to kind of testing, learning from different type of discipline. So what I learned from really the liberal arts education is that I don't have to, just focus on one thing. I can really be analytical and also test different subjects and really kind of think quickly as you switch from one course to another. And I kind of took that kind of experience to my workplace too. My career has not been linear. I was in a legal department within the energy tech company, and then into fundraising. And now I'm doing more sales business development. And so what I kind of took from my education and it's really the greater network that I've gained too. And so, I think looking back, one of my internship within an organization called I Have a Dream Foundation really set the precedent to my fundraising career for 4 years at Year Up. And then from there, I kind of pivot to where I am now doing business development, but also within the workforce development space. And so, I really think, I really strongly believe in the liberal arts education. It's not for everyone. And if you're one of those folks, in your teenage year that know exactly what you want to do next, good for you. Personally for me, I'm still growing up in some ways and still trying to figure out where I want to go next. But, in every workplace, I've definitely learned and, I took the skills that I acquired and took it to my next workplace as well.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I would definitely echo that as a senior who does not know what they want to do long term. So lots of time for exploration, I would say. Okay, so I'll start us off with our second question. So what do you recommend that liberal arts students take advantage of outside of the classroom while in undergrad? This can be personal experiences or even just things that you guys had wished you had done when you guys were in school. So is it okay if we start with you, Maylee, this time?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's several things. Looking back, I really wish I studied abroad in Australia. I had everything in place, and somehow my parents convinced me not to go. And so that was an opportunity I wish I actually took and learned from it, because I think, being in your early 20s and being immersed in a different culture and forcing yourself to be out of your comfort zone could be a really great learning experience. And then, some things that I've done a lot of different extracurricular activity outside of my coursework and in clubs at Columbia, and then also working as a volunteer for a domestic violence nonprofit really kind of helped me learn from a different perspective, but also grew my network and kind of helped me get into this passion that I have now, which is within the workforce, within a mission-driven organization. So in every organizations I worked at, it has always been, there's a strong mission that attracted me to it. And now too, outside of my, primary responsibility in my specific role and department, I also part of an Asian ERG leadership team. So helping find ways to support Asian employees within General Assembly. And so, my advice looking back to folks who are currently in school or just about to leave is really find ways to get yourself out of your comfort zone, immerse yourself in different environment where you can continue to learn and gain new perspectives. Because ultimately, those are the things that help you grow and kind of push you to taking some risk too, right? As you're thinking of where you want to go next and how you can continue growing your careers.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, Maylee, I did get to study abroad, and it was an amazing experience. I was in Madrid for 3 months, but unfortunately, I can't say that my intermediate level Spanish speaking has helped me land any jobs. But that's not to say that it hasn't given me a ton of other valuable experiences that I kind of been able to lean on, in my life, especially outside of my professional career. But in terms of things outside of the classroom, I think I got really lucky because while I would totally recommend that everybody kind of goes outside of their comfort zone and explores the different extracurricular opportunities on campus, I can't say that I did that a ton personally. So I was able to, get really lucky and take advantage of the, really the one that I was focusing a lot of my time on, which is actually a step team. So it was a dance team. It wasn't an on-campus kind of a professional career development group or the consulting club or the, startup entrepreneurial group. It was a dance group, and I was able to connect with former members on the team who whose professional careers I admired, and through that was able to actually land my first job that I was mentioned earlier. So I think the kind of takeaway there is to really expand the way that you think about kind of how you're taking advantage of extracurriculars for kind of your professional career growth, and also just kind of your own personal development. Just being sure to kind of go outside of your comfort zone, try things that interest you. You don't have to go into all of them with the with the understanding that they're gonna help you find a job down the line. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find that you don't learn something valuable that helps you grow as a person, and down the line that also might have an impact on your professional growth.
Awesome. Yeah, that was great. So kind of returning back to where you guys are today, I would love to hear just a bit more about how you guys found your niche per se in the startup world. I know both of you have kind of hinted it was kind of like a non-traditional path towards ending up where you are, but would love for you guys to touch on that. Any thoughts you have on other people looking to find a specific like niche within this broader startup ecosystem? So Jonas, would you be okay starting us off?
Sure. So I guess my career to, so far is kind of, it's limited. So I graduated in 2017. So that gives me about, like 4.5 or so years of kind of, trying to develop, who I am and turn myself into somebody that's, marketable to companies. And I do find that specializing to a degree is helpful. So by specializing, I mean, I've been in product roles, primarily throughout those 4.5 years. And so I landed in product because the person that I met and kind of got my first opportunity through, through that mentor who was a former stepper on the team I was on, was the chief product officer at the company that I ended up interning at my sophomore summer. So I definitely saw him as somebody that I wanted to learn from, and I, just by nature of having that connection, this brotherhood of kind of having danced on the same team for whatever reason, it brought us really close together, and I really emulated kind of the work that he was doing. So I part of it was, the person, but also I think I started to drive towards product because I noticed that it was, there's a lot of overlap with the kind of transferable skills that I've been able to kind of, collect over my time in school and in life. So as a product person, you don't necessarily need to have a technical background, but I always felt like people who had technical skills really were able to, take a lot of ownership and were kind of the impressive ones at the company. But I didn't have a computer science background. I'm terrible at math and science. And so that was never going to be the case for me. So as a product person, I was able to really leverage a lot of the other skills that I felt I had, which are communication ability, kind of my writing and analytical thinking skills, to kind of like, actually take on a position or a role where I felt like I did have some kind of direct impact on kind of the technical nature of the company. And that's kind of how I found my way into product. So I was able to kind of leverage that mentorship that I had from my boss, and come back actually the junior year to the same company, but working as a product intern under him. And then I continued to work throughout junior year and senior year, kind of on a part-time basis, doing a lot of work outside of schoolwork, which is something that I would totally recommend. The summers are a great time to get to kind of start building that experience, but as well as during the school year, if you can find opportunities that are remote or local to you, to try and find part-time opportunities if they are available, and use that to kind of make sure that come time for applying for jobs after graduation, you do have a kind of a solid foundation of experience to work with. So I was able to transition into a product role immediately after graduating, thanks to having had that experience, and I don't think I would have otherwise. So it's a little bit about how I found my niche, but I know everybody's story is going to be completely different.
Yes, and just such a nice transition to me, which is that I didn't actually, in my first 2 years of college, I didn't really take advantage of those internships that we had in New York City. And that really comes down to a personal choice, because my family's on Boston. I really got homesick during my first 2 years studying in New York City, although New York has a lot to offer, right? But it actually, so I've been working since 2011 at least. And even before college, I was working in retail, just doing like sales associate, right? Really entry-level jobs. And something I'll take away over looking back at my 10 years in the workforce is that, no job is ever too little or too big. And I think, as you're really like entry level or junior in terms of like your first job or maybe second job, there's going to be a lot of learning curve. If you have, the internship experience in college, that's great. But every workplace has its different norms, different culture. And, going from being in a corporate environment to transition to nonprofit, I definitely learned a lot too. But something I'll take note too is like once you get to like mid-level or close to mid-level to senior professional, then at that point you have the choice and the position to say no to opportunities. And going back, Nyla, your questions, about how did my journey kind of landed me in this kind of startup environment. And there's twofold. It's not, I didn't intentionally work for a startup. It's kind of how kind of just like opportunities came about, and it took advantage of these various openings that I was interested in. So I studied psychology, but I was not at the point where I want to go back to grad school yet. I made a point that like I want to gain work experiences, and I know for a fact I want to work for a really mission-driven organization. And so when I was working with recruiters, they connected me to an e-tech company. While it was a great environment, high tech, I did not love legal. I thought I might get into the legal world. And so that company itself was a startup, but I had no idea that was the case, right? Like within 6 months of joining, they acquired 5 different companies and became a super global company. And similarly, from there, going to working in nonprofit fundraising, I knew about the organization. It was not young. It was at least almost 10 years into its growth. But it was also very pivotal point too, where they were expanding to more cities. They got more investors, new presidents, and similarly too, I think it's just by chance and luck that I landed when I joined GA. It was very much a startup environment 4 years ago. But then within 2 months of joining the company, it got acquired by a global recruiting and talent company. And so I would say I've been very fortunate to have these opportunities to really learn, but also taking those, different jobs, different industries to create my own path. And I would say in all these different organizations, it was very much within the business development, sales and marketing field. So, so it's, it kind of brought me to where I am now.
That was great. Thank you, guys. I do want to pause and just remind everyone, feel free to send questions in via the Q&A. We are more than happy to just cater this panel towards your specific questions, specific interests, stuff like that. So feel free to submit. And then for our next question, I'm going to pivot kind of towards, rather than like how you ended up how you are, but ended up where you are, but more so, what did you guys feel like was missing? Like what did not really fit between your liberal arts education and your future in startups? And then if there were any gaps, how did you bridge these? So for this one, I'll start off with Maylee.
Yeah, so I think something I was really stuck on and didn't really know how to bring my start is like, I have a degree in psychology, and typically folks just go back to grad school or do something related. So I was at this point where I was very confused and not really sure where to go next. And that was, a challenging start. I think, it took me a year of like working with, mentors in some ways. So, friends that are, and family friends that are already very like much in their career. And then also tapping back to my university context too. So I definitely work with the career services, office a lot on, taking these tests to try to figure out like where my skill set might be based on these different type of industry. And yeah, I think, and I think something that was missing too is going back to those work internship opportunities. I didn't quite have a mentor, in my early career, and being, coming from an immigrant family household, I think, breaking into corporate America is something I have to just learn and really find my way through like connections within my own network. It was, I didn't really have a foundation for, like, where I can talk to my family about, okay, how do I navigate this workforce that they're not familiar with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I can kind of speak a little bit to like what wasn't missing, because I think it's easy to say, oh, like, my school didn't have provide access to a lot of the kind of resources that I needed to help me in my career, which is exactly how I felt, when I was at school, but kind of in retrospect, realized that there were a lot of resources that I just wasn't kind of trying hard enough to access. So I do want to make sure that I point out that, it might take a little bit of work to kind of find them and to, kind of take advantage of them, but, do be sure to, go to your school, kind of like your career resource center, if there's one available. Try and, there's a lot of platforms now that help you connect with alums from your school, LinkedIn being, one of the biggest, but, trying to kind of leverage those. But, one of the things that I felt like was, a huge miss on my part was actually not taking any of the coursework from the Entrepreneurial Leadership Studies minor that Tufts University had. Until I think my senior year, I just kind of took it as an elective because I was looking for a half credit course. So, it was actually a great course that was student taught by folks who, had, built their own startup while they were at the school, people who I could kind of relate to, given that they were my peers, and kind of giving a lot of the kind of information, or sharing a lot of information that I've actually, found helpful in my early days working in tech. So be sure to kind of seek out those resources. But, in terms of what was missing, I think that what you'll commonly hear from people who work in product is that there is no product management, specific degree that you can receive. It's not like computer science where you graduate and you kind of have gone through coursework that's going to help prepare you. Maybe in the future, or very soon in the future, I imagine that schools like accredited universities will start to include that, but that wasn't the case. And so I think getting creative about kind of the coursework that was available, and looking into kind of coursework that will help you get kind of these additional transferable skills that might help you at the field that you're trying to enter is what you have to do to be creative. But I guess that's something that you can also kind of look into external resources. Like today, like Maylee knows, there's companies like General Assembly that you can kind of take advantage of, use your online coursework to kind of get you there. But yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I would definitely +1 the note on LinkedIn. I've had many wonderful opportunities that have just resulted from like a blind LinkedIn message. So I think if there's something you don't have experience in, you're looking for like a mentor or just someone to give you advice, people love to help students. So I would absolutely just feel free to message a lot of people. Will not hurt. No real stakes in the situation. But moving to our next question, I want to know how you guys find balance in your lives. So basically catered towards like an undergrad that you're probably thinking of entering the workforce. What are your recommendations for finding a good balance between life, work, like not extracurriculars, but like actually like enjoying life outside of independent of work?
Yeah, may I start? So I was very much a workaholic, maybe up until 5 years ago, where I felt like work has to be a priority, and I did overlook, my relationship with friends and family, as well as my mental and physical health. And so something like, when you're just graduating or even college, right? I think there's a lot of expectations and pressure to say yes to everything. And that's when like the burnout could happen, right? Where you like don't make any time for yourself or to maintain that like work life integration. Because like I never seen, I like work and life to me is never like balanced. You have to give a little bit and take some back. And so, yes, when you're early in your career, definitely take advantage of opportunity, but also, recognize that you can say no to things. And sometimes that comes down to like social to life with friends and family, right? Like, if you're working 40 plus hours and then you're trying to fit in like exercise or your own like, self-care, but then on the weekend you have to spend every second with your friends, that may not be ideal. And what I took, away from these past 5 years, right, especially because of being 2 years in like a pandemic, but also, being in different stages of my life too, I've learned how, community, family, and friends, is like secondary to your physical and mental health. And then, work comes in, and you should always look at, at least I do, right? Now I look at work as a complement to what I already have. Does it align with my values? Does it make me happy? Because, life is short. I don't want to be philosophical here, but, you really try to think about, at least now that I'm not in my 30s now, I really like to be very intentional about my time, how I invest in myself and the people within my life.
Yeah, like +1, all of that. I think that it's something that I've gotten better at, over time. Coming out of college, I think a lot of us, kind of understand, have this mindset that we always have to kind of go, and that's essential to kind of success in your career. And so, I definitely fell into the trap of, not doing a great job of kind of taking care of myself. But I think a part of it is kind of, maturing and growing up. And this is something that happens to everybody in college. And especially it seems like it is kind of expedited after college. And, getting better at kind of recognizing, what you actually value, what's worth your time. And like Mei Li mentioned, just, making sure that you kind of prioritize those things accordingly and, find time for them, whether it comes down to kind of scheduling things, which, I definitely don't do. I'm not a big scheduler. I think it's kind of more blocking off these items mentally in my mind so that I can make sure to prioritize what I think is going to be good for, me, my health, kind of, just also what I think is also going to push me forward in my career. So whether that's kind of outside learning or, spending time with my family. So living in Boston my whole life, having the majority of my family in Boston has been huge. That's, been something that I'm always able to lean on. I went to school a year or two. I don't know how people go from, like California and move to Boston and kind of just, shift their life over here. I feel like, especially with things moving remotely, we'll probably start to see more people trying to stay closer to the family, but that's just something that's really, near and dear to me and kind of always helps me stay grounded. Also getting a dog recently has kind of helped and, not helped in some ways. But, for the most part, that's also been great. Having a dog really forces you to, or maybe not an animal, or just some driving force to get you outside, especially when we're in front of computer screens and TV screens, some sort of a screen all day. Making sure that you're setting yourself up to do something outside is I think it's good for all of us. You'll kind of thank yourself after.
I also like to add that too, as you're working at different places and building your career, sometimes you learn over time how to manage up. And I think that's a very important skill, whether in your personal life or professional life, to really set that boundaries for yourself, but also, advocate for yourself within the workplace too. And, I definitely work in environments that may not be the best for my mental health, or, you've recognized like red flags of whether the culture or the management can support your professional and personal growth as well. So I just like to also add that too, while you're trying to create those boundaries and find those, set a better life and work integration. And that's something I always tell folks to also, to be aware of.
Awesome. Once again, we do want to make space for audience engagement, so feel free to send in all of your questions. We would love to answer them, so feel free to submit those if you guys have a chance. But for our next question, I want to get some more practical advice in terms of what types of careers do you think new grads interested in startups should be looking for? What are some good entry-level positions in startups for recent liberal arts majors that you think might be good? And then also, what do you think that career path would look like, just on a very high level? And Jonas, do you want to start us off for this one?
Sure. So my experience is going to be very specific to kind of like early stage startups, and probably early to growth stage. I haven't worked in a company that's had more than 40 people. So take it with a grain of salt. If that's not something you're interested in doing, then you can probably disregard. Actually, I think there is a lot of crossover. So what I've seen, is there's a lot of personality types. Assuming you're going into your next job and it's a tech startup outside of college and you don't have a ton of actual hands-on experience, that's totally fine. Probably the vast majority of people are in that same boat. You can kind of try and align yourself based on your personality and skill set as best you can. And a couple of things that I've seen is that people who go into sales are generally really competitive and able to kind of handle difficult situations, and are good at kind of direct communication. And I think that's why we see a lot of athletes in sales roles, and they kill it there. So not to say that you have to be an athlete to go into sales, but if you can kind of think about a lot of the skills that go into that, you can kind of imagine whether or not this would be right for you. And sales roles actually tend to be some of the higher paying roles within a tech startup. Especially once particularly when you factor in their compensation, and bonuses that come with, kind of our merit-based, based on deals closed, or however, their org structure has developed that. So it's a really viable first opportunity to stick your foot in the door in the tech industry. But there's definitely kind of a certain mindset that you need. I've had to put on a sales hat at this company I work at now, where I was the first non-founder employee, and before we had any salespeople, and I don't think I'm built for it. So it's definitely take that with a grain of salt. So there's I'd say for people who are on the kind of creative creative side, I would definitely recommend marketing roles, whether that be content marketing, which was actually the first job opportunity that I had at a tech company, and also looking at kind of SEO marketing, which is search engine optimization. So these are skills that you can learn. There's a lot of really accessible information on how to kind of get started in this online, and it's something that really benefits you if you have a background in writing and kind of general kind of go-getter attitude. So marketing is something that got my foot in the door, and I don't know that I had any other skill sets other than kind of this go-getter attitude, just kind of willing to do what I needed to do to kind of help push the company's goals forward, and also the ability to write decently well. software development is the big one that a lot of folks would love to work in, and there's generally the kind of assumption that you're graduating with a computer science degree in order to land a software development job. But there's also a ton of opportunities to get experience outside of coursework to potentially land a role in software development. I have friends who've been able to do that, who are now making a lot more than I do. And they'd never had a computer science degree, and they just kind of put in the time to take some of these comprehensive computer science courses, and were able to also kind of have the skill set to be able to kind of think in that way and pick those things up quickly. So I don't know. There's probably a general assembly course, not to but there's plenty of online courses. Some of that definitely look into it. Sometimes they can be expensive, but there are kind of a lot of different models out there now where you can potentially have them take from your actual first year salary. Don't know about the kind of how that comes out, but look into the opportunities out there, and definitely talk to somebody who actually has software development experience to get their input on how to best go about it. And then the last thing is customer success is one of the most growing fields in the tech space right now. It's something that I've helped kind of develop the process for internally at our company, and the skills that I feel like kind of match really well with that. Are a lot of the kind of transferable kind of liberal arts education skills that I think a lot of folks would graduate with. So communication skills, writing skills, kind of good people skills, and the ability to kind of help shepherd customers to kind of their outcomes within your product or service that you're providing. So it's a great entry level position, whether or not you have experience in tech. And it opens a lot of doors for you down the road. So just about all of these things that I mentioned, all these roles, I feel like do a great job of, either helping you figure out if this is the career path you want to go down, or, give you the opportunity to, really start to learn about, the ins and outs of working in a tech company, and then give you the opportunity to potentially pivot into kind of other similar roles. So that's just, really high level overview, but if anybody, has questions about any of these paths or anything else, I'm happy to go deeper.
Thank you. That's such a nice overview of like different opportunities you break into tech. I'm going to offer a different lens, which is like, depending on the industry, there are so many different types of jobs too. Operations role or something more in like investor relations or something along that line is always a nice way to break into too. And when you think of startup, typically people think of like, early stage, really like bear culture, like lots of like free perks and all of that. But there are different stages of startups. So Series A, B, and C is quite different from Series D. And so something to know that is like very early stage startup, typically when they're hiring for these more technical roles, they're looking for mid to senior level professionals. So because they're building their product from the ground up, or maybe they have a prototype and they're trying to do market fit and market launch. So if this is one of your first jobs, but you're really interested in pivoting to a specific industry, definitely informational interview, networking, finding a mentor is helpful, tapping into your, college network, but then also look at the different types of openings. They list on, for example, angel.co or something along that nature, right? Built in Boston is a great resource. LinkedIn Job always, even like Google search can be helpful too. So definitely look at their experience level. If there's an associate or entry level role, definitely could be a great way to kind of break into a new field or a specific startup. But if they're looking for like 5+ years experience and this is your first or second job, that may be a little challenging. I just want to bring it out there. That is just the reality of it. And so going back to what we said earlier about taking advantage of, if you're still in college, right, take advantage of those internships, finding a mentor early can be a great. And like education and learning doesn't stop at college, right? You can continue learning LinkedIn Learning, for example, Coursera. And if you want to pay for education, you can do something like more immersive and boot camp, like General Assembly. Or maybe, eventually you want to get back a master's, and that can definitely like up your salary expectations and also make you more competitive as well.
Yeah, both of those answers were super good. I think the only thing I would add is definitely like, since you hope most people listening to this are probably in college, also look at your alumni networks because you can see where other people are working. I think, like Jonas even said, like a personal connection can be a very compelling way to get into a company, especially an early stage one. So it might be helpful even just to get advice into different companies. So just something to consider. But another question that I
can I add one more thing? And so while you're all like, finishing or starting your first job, it's never too early to also start your first startup if you're already strong technically, or, you have some connections, maybe in your personal connections. So I just always want to put that. If you have the entrepreneurial mindset and you love to hustle, you love building, creating, you're always hungry to like, create and like build. I mean, that could be also a great starting point as well. It's never,
Yeah, I would absolutely second that. There's so many resources in the Boston area, especially if you're looking for funding or like early stage seed money can be super helpful. And some of it is specifically aimed towards new grads and students. So definitely something to look into if you've ever even considered it. My next question is kind of about risk. So I think by their nature, I would say more so early stage startups rather than like a Series D they're generally seen as something that's a little bit more uncertain than regular later stage companies where you can sign a job and expect to work there for say like the rest of your life. So I guess what advice do you have for people who might be nervous about this fact, especially taking on a job that might be seen as risky at a young age?
Yeah, I could definitely speak to that after, having just joined a company as the first employee. I definitely recognized that there was some risk. But, first off, like disclaimer, I was living at my parents' house up until a couple of months ago. So risk to me was definitely like kind of leveraged by, not worrying about whether or not I, ran out of, the company ran out of money and I was out of a job temporarily. So not everybody has that, is fortunate enough to have access to that, mentioning people who travel, from California to live in Boston and end up living here their whole life. They might not be able to do what I was able to do. But, I also kind of had, taken a couple of sacrifices, to, try and minimize how much I spent. Like salary is not at market rate when working at a early stage startup. A lot of what you're working for is, based on your equity compensation. And so I was definitely kind of, more risk averse, or, just given that, I didn't have to worry about kind of things not working out. And, my general interest in kind of putting myself into, more risk loving. Generally, I was interested in working for a startup because, you really get the ability to, like wear many hats. That's one of the things that you hear a lot about kind of the startup lifestyle. In my time at Parler, I've worked kind of in a sales capacity, in a customer support capacity, obviously in a product management capacity, and have like worked directly in kind of helping develop the kind of Parler database architecture. I'm not writing code, but I'm involved in a lot of the decision making that goes into this. And so by, being at the earlier stages of a company, you're just, being exposed to so much information that is going to, really help you level up as quickly as possible. I feel like that's probably the biggest competitive advantage of working with the company, as long as there's, strong leadership, people that you can trust. And so I think it's really important to, if you're going into working at a startup and kind of taking that risk on, that you kind of do your due diligence, make sure that, you're working in a space that you're passionate about, because it's going to, require a lot more of you than it might to kind of clock in and clock out at a, larger enterprise size company. And also make sure that you kind of are confident in the abilities of the leadership team. And I think that's going to, kind of be a lot, especially in your earlier in your career, who you're looking to kind of learn from, and you're also kind of hoping is able to kind of shepherd your company to success in the future, which is obviously the end goal.
Yeah. To add to that, I think everyone should take some risk at some point. And I think when you're pivoting from in college or grad school to your first job, that is a risk and stuff, right? You don't know where this job will take you. So, looking back, I always felt like I was risk adverse. And then, I reevaluated myself and kind of like reflected a bit. And actually, I'm more of a risk taker, right? I went to college from Boston on my own with 2 suitcases, $1,000 in my bank account, and I kind of like figured it out along the way. And then, moving back to Boston, I definitely was very fortunate to have the support of my family and friends as well. But then I moved to Providence without knowing anyone there, to a job that will help me grow my career. And I was, looking at, I was taking some more risk than I thought. And something I will say to everyone is, and it's okay if you feel like at any point, like that was not the best choice, or you felt like your career path could be different if you chose B versus A, right? I think it really comes down to, forcing yourself to learn, and going back to working at startup that could, that may be very early stage. Of course, there's going to be a risk to it, but I think there's definitely some research you can do beforehand, right? Thinking about what does the, how is that startup company value that? Is there a potential for them to become worth like 5 billion over X amount a year? There are public information where you can learn more about the specific industry, the specific company, learn more about like competition, market fit before kind of diving deep into it. And if they happen to have more, entry level or like new opportunities that align with your interests, then I would say, based on what you've done in the research, if there's potential for it to grow quickly, that could be a really great opportunity for you to dive right in, like, and wear many hats. And sometimes you learn faster and grow faster professionally in a startup environment than in the more established enterprise that has very specific, rules and regulations and, like very limited opportunity for growth.
Great. So I just want to quickly pause since we're at about 10 or so minutes left and see if anyone has any questions that they want to ask our panelists. Both of these people are, as you see, very knowledgeable on the topic. So if you have any questions, feel free to send it in the Q&A section on the right side of your screen. I can give a couple seconds to see if anyone sends anything in. And if not, I'll just ask a couple more of my questions. But I really do encourage you guys to ask something.
Yeah, please. You want to make sure that this is helpful for everybody.
Perfect.
And if you don't have, you got a question. Perfect.
Thank you, Chip. We'll answer Chip's question. So he said, can you point to a few skills or qualities attributable to your liberal arts education that have been value adds to the roles that you are currently in today?
Yeah, so I could take that one. I would say like analytical writing is probably the one that's helped me the most. As a product manager, a lot of what we do is, documentation and, trying to kind of like make, concepts that are, generally difficult to understand, easy to understand. And I think the, ability to, or the kind of liberal arts education in particular, I was studying international relations and economics, and a lot of these courses in kind of the political science and even in the econ courses, there's a lot of papers that you had to write. Even on a weekly basis, it felt like I was being forced to kind of put difficult concepts on paper and make them easy to understand. And so I think continuing to kind of like work that muscle of writing on topics and not only trying to convey things in an eloquent way, but also doing it in a way that is like helpful in trying to like break down difficult topics and kind of forcing you. I think reading is probably another one of those things. Like when you're reading difficult to understand or kind of like more complex topics in political theory, it really forces you to kind of exercise how to kind of think analytically and present your information in a way that is kind of almost in line with the scientific method, and product that I kind of do wish that I spent more time in science, because a lot of it is about kind of like hypotheses and kind of testing theories, and kind of that line of thinking is super helpful in a lot of things in tech. Thanks, Chip.
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I did a lot of clubs and volunteer opportunities I mentioned earlier. And so I think being in that environment where I've learned to work with people from different backgrounds. Also, just it really empowered me to be a better public speaker and be more comfortable, demonstrating my voice. And definitely now in a more, previously in more of a marketing capacity, but now more in business development partnerships, it really definitely comes in handy of being more confident. The beauty of my college that I went to too, it was an all women's college. And so naturally in this environment where women were supporting each other, empowering everyone to become their own leaders, in a very competitive environment as well, it's also something, I took away from my education, where it prepared me for the different type of competition, whether in sales, marketing, within competition, different industry, different companies that kind of competing with ours too. And then other thing I want to add too is during my liberal arts education, maybe it's because I was first generation college student. It definitely, I definitely failed many times, not more than once. And I think getting comfortable with failing and then, coming back up from that, I think that instilled a level of grit that, I naturally have, but then also kind of develop over time as well.
That was great. Thank you, guys. I would second the get comfortable with failure note. I think especially now that I am a senior in college, I'm getting more relaxed with talking about failure. But I think definitely when you come, it's kind of one of those things where everyone acts like they have their life together and no one talks about anything that ever goes wrong. But just know that everyone is trying to figure it out, even if they seem like the most confident person, the person who has their full-time job freshman year. Everyone is in a different situation. And I would guarantee that no one actually is as confident as they seem. So just feel comfortable with that. I think we probably have time for another audience question if anyone wants to shoot one in. I'll give it a couple seconds, and then if not, I'll ask another one of our questions.
Yeah, I'm really curious. There's 23 people watching. Are folks still in college? Are they recently out of college, working? I'd love to hear from people who are here, even if you don't have a question. Who have we been talking to? Has this been helpful at all?
Yeah, feel free to add your comments or answers to the chat too. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing now, I'm happy to drop my LinkedIn, and feel free to connect with me afterwards. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Awesome. So I'll give it a minute or so, and then I'll just hop in to our questions if not. Okay, I will ask one of our questions, but at any point, if anyone wants to send a question, feel free and we will divert to your question because we want to make sure this is as catered to your interest as possible. But I kind of want to end on a happy note. So I want to know what is your favorite part of your job so far? Anyone can start us off, feel free.
For me, it's a very impactful job. In fundraising and now doing employer partnerships, I'm really helping folks build a career. In a nonprofit environment, I was providing fundraising money so that the organization can continue to grow and sustain itself. But then also that comes with growing the network. So these opportunities, you can really launch a career within the corporate America space. And then now in my current role at General Assembly, I'm working with different companies of various sizes, startups included, on really bridging the gap between them and junior talent. And so it's a very rewarding job. It can be very challenging because of competing priorities and different demands. So, but yeah, I look back and I've always been very grateful for the opportunity I have to make an impact in the lives of others.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Unfortunately, I can't speak to, my job building software for other companies to use as being as fulfilling from a, actual kind of altruistic perspective. But, in terms of, my own kind of growth, I love that my job kind of just being at the, earliest stage you can, feasibly be at with a company and watching it grow, and having recently, raised another round of funding. It's really fulfilling to see be something that you've, really put a lot of your own kind of work into, thankfully without the kind of added risk of actually being one of the founders, but, being able to kind of see some of that come into, some of that hard work come into fruition. So, being at an early stage company seems like, the generally where I want to, where I see myself, because you can really directly see the impact of your work. Especially being in a product role where, you can actually click, things that, where you just made decisions on. So I think that's really something that I value in kind of what I do. And, it's really happy that I'm able to incorporate that into kind of this experience.
Awesome. I think this is our 5-minute warning from Amanda. So if anyone has any final questions, feel free to toss them in the chat since we do have to conclude very shortly. Thank you, Chip, for your reply to our public question, really carrying this chat for us. Okay, I'll give it a second and then I can just do a final ask of you guys for any last points of advice, things you wish you had emphasized, touched on, any just things that you think are important. Okay, I'm not seeing any Q&A, so I'll open it to you both if you guys have any last words of advice, words of wisdom in these final 4 minutes and 2 seconds that you want to share with the students or anything like that.
Yes, I just want to commend all of you for making this time to listen. I think this is a very great learning opportunity and moment to kind of find out where you want to go next. And like I said earlier, I'm happy to connect. I dropped my LinkedIn in the chat, so feel free to add me afterwards. And I just want to wish you all good luck to the start of your career.
Yeah, so, I just want to say that, I by no means have any of it figured out, and that's, totally fine. And so, just want to let everybody know to the fact that you're here and that you're kind of putting in the effort, trying to, learn from others is really the best thing that you can be doing outside of, actually just doing it. So, just don't be afraid of, failure. That's something that's kind of held me back in a lot of cases. And just kind of go out there, try learning from others and doing things.
Okay, that was great. I think that concludes this session. So thank you all for joining us. And it was great. Feel free to connect with any of us on LinkedIn. I think you have our information. So have a great day.
Take care, everyone.